We're good.
All right, we're good.
All right, then I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Everybody's good with that. And just start by saying thanks everybody for making time to be here. It's a really busy week. It's a very stormy day. Our powers flickered a few times this morning and we've lost internet. So hopefully it sticks together for the next hour. But if I do disappear, that's why. I'll start right off then with the review of the draft meeting agenda. Everybody should have received it and be able to see it right now. Does anyone have any changes to the draft agenda?
Kevin?
Yep.
This is
Dan?
Dan. Yeah, under other business, I'll bring up an issue that was raised in the last meeting, which was the free fishing days.
Okay. So we can add that to other business. That's right. All right, anything else? Then can I get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
Khalil here, I move to approve.
And a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thanks, Patrick. All right, agenda's approved. Moving on to the minutes from our last meeting. Do we have any corrections to those draft meeting minutes? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
Khalil here, move to approve.
Thank you, Khalil. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Patrick. All right, the minutes are approved. And then looks like we're starting off with Ben with an INE update. Want to go ahead, Ben?
Hey y'all, Mike, are you gonna switch over to the slideshow? Oh, there we go. We can go right past that one because we don't need it. Yeah, and Kevin, feel free to chime in on anything that you would like regarding this, but I wanted to update the panel. We were lucky enough to get some funds funneled towards us to work on some videos with On the Water Media through a state grant program. And the direction we're hoping to take this is to have striped bass kind of fishing videos with a big focus on optimizing for a healthy release and minimizing post-release mortality. We, in talking with a lot of anglers and guides and other people, members of the public, the feedback I got about these videos is if we want to maximize views, we should be offering as much kind of value added to them as possible. So the strategy we're hoping to take here is to do 3 separate videos, one from a boat, one from shore, and one from a kayak, highlighting different ways you can catch striped bass, and then the different approaches you're going to want to take to safely land and release those fish. For each one of these videos, we also want to kind of provide a united front with all stakeholders. So they're going to feature a recreational angler, kind of paid member, person, like a charter guide type person in the video, and then a DMF staff member. We're trying to shore up who those people will be, but we know for the boat one, Jeff Corwin has already volunteered his services free of charge to be kind of a celebrity recreational angler. Hopefully that will bring some eyeballs to the videos as well. And we're going to go out on a charter boat out of the South Shore who's agreed to take us out on their vessel free of charge. And so we'll all be out there fishing on their charter vessel, and we'll try and talk about some boat-based strategies to up your striped bass catch, and the entire time we'll be sprinkling in bits from our research about tackle choice and avoiding post-release mortality, and then having segments about bringing that fish to the boat and releasing it safely and quickly to minimize post-release mortality. So this seems like a really great way for us to get the message out. I think that we need to be thinking too about consistent messaging to the public about what's really driving striped bass population trends right now, which is overall effort and recruitment failure. So we're not getting enough new fish. We have a lot of effort on the stock, but these are some really good steps we can take with the fishing effort that's going on right now to hopefully improve the resource. I'm really excited to pair up. We had a great call with Neil and I did with Kevin last week about pairing up with On the Water Media for this. We should get a lot of great products and multiple formats that we can use to reach out to the public and get the word out, and hopefully have a lasting impact of that across all the new social media stuff as well as more traditional outlets. So really excited for that. Kevin, do you have anything you want to add?
I'll just add, like, I've only had about a week to start thinking about this, but I'm really excited about it. I think there's a lot we're going to be able to do together, and yeah, and we're hoping to get some, Jeff Corwin and possibly some other big names involved, and I think it'll have a good impact. So excited to be part of it.
Should be really neat. It's nice that this opportunity happened. Mike Armstrong, can you flip forward a slide? Are there any questions from the panel or input from the panel before we move on to striped bass related science?
I'm not seeing any questions, Ben.
I do.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Patrick Pocket. I just where in the presentation, Ben, you mentioned 3 videos, and then I see in the screen that there's an intention to do Instagram and TikTok stuff, and I might be saying things that you already know that I just didn't see. So forgive me. I don't want this to sound like talking down, but in a shoot like this, my experience is that if you walk into it planned, like with the TikTok thing, if you're shooting a 3-minute video or whatever the YouTube piece of content is going to look like, if you do it smartly, you can break that down into a half a dozen shorter TikTok things. And I just wanted to make sure that was in your mind. And I assume it is because of the people you're working with. I just needed to say it so that it was.
Yep. Thank you, Patrick. I was trying to kind of move through things a little quickly, but that's something Kevin and I talked about and Neil talked about on Friday, or last Monday, and really excited about it. Like where we can go out and make these videos, and then we're going to be able to break it down into a number of shorter, discrete things for those, short format social media outlets, and as well as having a nice big long video for YouTube. But yeah, we'll definitely be doing that. Partitioning it out.
Thank you.
Kevin's crew, very happy to be in their hands because they have a lot of experience in it.
All right. I asked Ben to put a couple of slides together about the striped bass projects, which would be the circle hook comparison and the terminal tackle, of which this panel has approved research money for. So I thought it was important that you see that one is completed and one is completed its first year and just has some fabulous data. And I'll let Ben talk about it.
Uh-oh. My slides not do well with your PowerPoint, Mike. Well, anyways, that's just a figure kind of showing what we found through our post-release mortality stuff, which I think most of you have seen. I presented on it. Mike and Dean did a great presentation that included some of this at the MFAC meeting in September. So I think most of you are familiar with it. But so the circle hook study we did with the 300 plus tagged fish from 2020 and 2021 is pretty much ready for publication. We're just incorporating some last edits from Mike Armstrong. We hope to send it out this past Friday, but we'll be getting it out by this coming Friday at the latest. We're really excited to have that submitted for publication. Feel great about it. So what we're hoping is that by April it will be accepted for publication, and we'll be able to start to incorporate some of these things into the management process as much as we can. But at just the short and sweet on that is it's going to be great to finally have that out in the world. Just to remind everybody, we didn't really see much of a difference in the way we were fishing between circle and J hooks, but that doesn't mean that there isn't across all fisheries or all fishing types and bait types a difference, but it's just what we saw in ours. And I put this particular figure up because one of the great things about that study is that Mike Adine was able to create a predictive model of estimated post-release mortality from all the work we did in it. So now we have this idea, and this is kind of breaking out. This figure, I think, breaks out that really nicely, but that dependent on a couple important factors like water temperature, on hook time, and where that hook ended up, we can predict mortality. And so, Mike, if you bump forward a slide. Yep, the titles really did not go well. So we launched, hopefully you all know, we launched a citizen science project that has been really, really successful. It's been awesome. And we're 1 year in on it, and we had I think really over 3,500, nearly 3,700 fish that were reported. We have seen a lot of important things, like on that bait and hook thing that I was just mentioning. We actually saw from the data that we received from the public that mackerel were one of the higher, what looks like will be one of the higher mortality bait types when you look at all the different bait types. Mackerel and eel seem to be higher than other species, and especially menhaden, which is pretty interesting. We saw a bunch of other effects. If you haven't gone online, you can search up our page, and we have everything online. You can see on the right-hand side of this slide, we had a bunch of great partners in this project that really helped with our outreach on the water. It's been really fun to watch. We were able to track our signups for the project, and we could see, this spring, Kevin was nice enough to have Bill Hoffman and myself come in when we talked about how we were launching this project, and we had 100+ signups in the next 3 days after On the Water launched that podcast. We got bumps from Hoagie and Salty Cape putting materials online. Got One has helped tailor their app so they can be used to report data for this project. Costa and Hoagie both donated prize packages, which were awesome. So we've been giving anglers sunglasses and fishing rods and lures and everything else. Mouth of the Merrimack, we also did a podcast there. And then Backcountry Hunters and Anglers have sponsored our Shiny application, so everybody can go online, anybody can go online and see all these results as they're coming in. If you haven't checked out that website, I really encourage you to, because I think it's really great that we're doing this citizen science project. We've gotten a ton of interaction with the public, a ton of public participation, so much data, and now we're turning around and giving it right back to them and showing them what they're submitting. So I think this is kind of the ideal of what you'd want to see in a project like this, where we're doing high quality science, using citizen science data, and also providing like a high degree of give back and transparency to the public that are submitting. So it's really neat. And I would say that the one thing we're hoping for year two, this is envisioned as a 2-year study, and we will be doing a second year, is that we branch out a little farther with the help of On the Water. As you see, a lot of these are Massachusetts area brands. We had a ton of Massachusetts participation, but I think a lot of people from other states didn't necessarily sign up because they thought maybe it was just for Massachusetts residents. So we're trying to change our messaging around that a little bit, and making a lot of distinct efforts to get out of Massachusetts and publicize this. Mike will be working with all the other ASFFC board members from their respective states to get the word out, and guides and other promotional materials that states put out in the spring. Myself and Bill Hoffman are going to go down to the New Jersey Saltwater Expo, which is pretty much the largest saltwater fishing specific show on the East Coast. I'll be participating in a roundtable expo about post-release mortality, and we're going to have a booth at the show to sign up anglers for this project. I've also been in touch with Hudson River folks, the Riverkeeper Foundation. They're interested in promoting our project. So we're hoping to get a lot more participation from outside of Massachusetts, which will be very helpful, because one of the limitations right now, one of the interesting things we saw was a temperature effect, where mortality really seems to go up when the water temperature is above 74, 75 degrees Fahrenheit. In Massachusetts, there's only a few places that really happens, and only for really small periods. If we can get more data from fishing to our south, we're going to see a lot more of those kind of environmentally specific, area specific effects. So we're hoping to get, and we're also going to bring in different fishing styles. So we're pretty enthusiastic about getting the word out over a wider range and getting people to understand that this isn't just a Massachusetts angler study. Yay, Patrick, I see your video came on.
A key that there's a question coming. Is there potential funding sources from outside the Commonwealth?
We haven't really sought out other potential funding sources, because as you can see, this is a pretty low cost project for us, really. We did this year on roughly $30,000. It's not a high cost project. It really, for us, is the only cost is these really the sampling kits. At this point, this year we bought We did buy about $10,000 worth of raffle prizes in Shimano rod and reel combos and some other things. Penn Fishing America, I believe, is going to be donating rod and reel combos in the coming year. Costa, we hope, will also do prizes again in the form of sunglasses. So I don't know that we're going to have any costs for raffle prizes this year. At this point, so at that point, we're just talking about sampling kits. So it hasn't been something we've really tried to go out and get money for, Patrick, just because it seems pretty scalable on our budget.
So it's just a follow up. So the main cost is basically staff time, correct?
Yeah, staff time, and even then, we're talking about is and the sampling kits. So the sampling kits are about $30 a pop. It's just about the best we can do. We went in the sampling kit, we mail out a digital thermometer, a digital stopwatch, and some data sheets. And getting the price down on those two items is really what it comes down to. We do have prizes, like when people submit their first report, they do get a pair of fishing pliers. We still have plenty of those left in stock, and we've gotten some good support and low prices for that from some local tackle shops that basically pass them on at cost, which is really generous. So it's been a very affordable project. We have one staff member who's actually not paid out of recreational funds, who collates all the reports and enters them into the database. And then the same Micah Dean's really running the database and has scripted all the analyses, and he's running all of that. So Neil helps a lot with the INE outreach, which has been great. So it's not an exceptional amount of staff time, and I think that for what we're getting, it's phenomenal value. I mean, we wanted to keep this meeting short, but just to briefly, I'll verbally remind the panel, the idea here is that we did that tagging work, so we were able to create this model of post-release mortality. That was step one. Step two is that we're now doing a citizen science project where in a really affordable way, we're getting data on thousands of fish across multitudes of gear types and environmental conditions. So we're going to come up with estimates for all these different gear types and conditions of post-release mortality. And then the third step we should be doing, hopefully starting next year, is a survey to understand what the angling use of all these gear types is along the coast, or at least in Massachusetts. So then we're going to come up with a comprehensive post-release mortality estimator that can replace that Diodati blanket time. So I think in the scheme of things, this is a great value.
Ben, Khalil here.
Khalil.
You may have a nice presentation too, by the way. You might have said it. I'm hearing my speaker is not coming through very clear. How do folks? First of all, the folks that were involved this year are going to be keeping the equipment for, I would assume, next year if they continue on. So that's going to be a cost savings right there, that you don't have to give them a stopwatch and a thermometer and etc. I would imagine that's going to be a little bit of a cost savings, but you may have said it, but how do we go about advertising this for the public so they can get involved?
Yeah, clearly, absolutely, there will be a cost savings there. We have instructions on our website about ways you could do it, and we offer links, Amazon links to the equipment we would give you. So if you want to go buy it yourself, how you would go about doing that. We have done a lot of online advertising to date through social media. We've sent out emails to license holders. I think that, Kevin has done stuff in On the Water for us. Moving into the new calendar year, we're going to have things in our fishing guide, and we're hoping in other states' fishing guides. And we'll look to putting advertisements into a couple of the different more popular fishing magazines and periodicals. And that's been the main way we've done outreach. We've tried to simplify all of our online URLs, so we have short URLs for everything, so you don't have to go through a bunch. Neil's done a great job reorganizing our web pages. He's going through the entire division's website, but so far he's really been focusing on these striped bass projects, so that sometimes our website can be a little hard to find what you're looking for. I think in the case of striped bass, and specifically these projects, it's all very clear and interlinked, so you can really find your way around pretty easily. If you have any suggestions that you think that we should be covering, certainly appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And again, I apologize if I'm asking you to repeat something. How many participants were there this year?
There were over 3,000 fish, and we gave away, I think, 700 kits, either 500 or 700 kits. I think we had about 200 individual participants.
That's not a bad start.
No, it's not a bad start, but it was very heavily Massachusetts. So that's really our focus for the next year, is to get participants from outside of Massachusetts. We did have a fair number from Rhode Island and Connecticut as well, but nothing like what you see in Massachusetts. And you can see all of this on that that website for any panel members or anybody you know who's interested. There's 3 different tabs on that, and you can see information about the who's submitting reports, what we did a brief angler avidity survey, so you really have the whole spectrum of the data that we have received that you can go and check out on your own. So it's a really I love that part. I love the whole project, but especially that.
Ben, I'll send the link out to all the panel members again.
That'd be fantastic. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Ben.
No problem, Cleo.
All right, if there's no more questions, let's go to
Dan, I thought you had a hand up. Did you want to chime in?
Nope, thank you anyway.
Thank you, panel. Nice to see you.
Ross is going to talk about one that's well along, one that's just beginning, and one that we'd like to discuss with you and get your approval to move forward on. Ross?
Good morning, everybody. We have a little bit of time left in the morning. While Ben was talking, I looked up our wind gusts right now. We've got 49-mile-an-hour gusts at the Buzzards Bay buoy, so it's cranking out there. My lights have flickered too. Anyhow, so this is the public access. Next slide, please, Mike. Great.
Oh, I don't.
Well, yes, sir, Mike.
I'm having trouble speaking, so I like to stand by and listen.
Okay, do you have a question though right now?
Well, I'm wondering, I'm wondering where we're going with the access on the canal and the Marion. I see it got marked down. How that's coming?
Marion got marked down. Why don't we visit that at the end of this, because there were actually some potential things that really fall more on the commissioner and his people in the last week up there, and how that relates to things going on at the canal. So is that okay, Mike?
That's fine.
Great, thank you. So anyhow, the Salem Willows Park Pier, as everyone knows and hopes at least, is the next large project that we have in the pipeline. It is currently out to bid. This morning I edited this and we had 17 construction companies requesting the bid package. Well, it's 18 now. I didn't have a chance to edit that again yet, but that's okay. We can do that. The bid package is done. Obviously, the specs and plans are all in this book. If you guys can see my face, I don't know if you can or not. And that's ready to go. The opening date on that is January 11th at 11 a.m. So if you do know any construction companies that are going to do this, they need to request the bid package directly from me. If you are not registered, you cannot make a bid. There's multiple reasons for this. Primarily, if there are any questions that come up through the process, everybody has an equal footing. So we post all questions and on Combis, even though the project itself is advertised through the what is it called? A different thing. I'll think of it in a second. I'm getting a little stage fright here, I guess. Central Register, that's it. So anyhow, have them contact me directly. My email address and contact information is all in the advertisement, both on the Central Register and in Combis. I just want to be clear with that. And then they can see the entire bid package and what is required, and everything else. And next slide, please, Mike. Somerset Slade's Ferry, which we discussed at the last rec panel meeting. Our expectation, and the last time that we looked at this property, I told you guys that the bid for this would be, in the neighborhoods of about $100,000. As it turns out, we only got one bid. That was a couple of months ago, or yeah, thereabouts, for $250,000. Currently, we think we really need to rebid this project. It's a high profile project. It's a project in a part of the state geographically where we have not put a lot of money and a lot of effort. And there's very deserving communities in those areas. I'll quote Mike Moss again: "We're going to build stuff where the poor people are." There's poor people there than everybody else. Heavily used area, great fishery, as I've said before, maybe one of the most underrated fisheries in the state. So anyhow, that's what's going on at Somerset Slade's Ferry. Next slide, please.
Yeah, but before we move on, Ross,
before we move on, yeah, go ahead.
But I just wanted to say this is the problem we're having with the rec fund. And I added an item for a brief discussion on an increased fee for the permit. If these continue to go up like this, it's just unsustainable. We either get out of the business of big piers or we get some increase in funding some other way, because this is not sustainable. The Salem Willows Pier started at 2 million. We suspect the bids are going to come in around 4 million at least. Fortunately, Salem is committed to it. As you recall, we committed 2 million of the rec fund, and Salem has committed. But these things are becoming prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
And next we'll have another example.
Well, sure, and just to support what Mike just said, Mike Armstrong, that is, we did the Oak Bluffs Pier for 1 point something million dollars. We did the Deer Island Pier for 2 point something million dollars, and Salem is going to be 5 point something million dollars. Now that there is somewhat of a scale difference there, but that's we're talking a few feet of difference in each pier. The cost of everything is just really, we're in a time of great inflation, and everybody's fully aware of that every time they go to the grocery store, so we don't need to labor on it. Mike's point is very well taken. Okay, so the Zero Marion Road property has come back into the crosshairs of sort of a target to potentially purchase. I worked with Joan Pierce from DFW and Jason Zimmer. Jason, immediately after seeing the property, said, "Yeah, let's buy it." We had the property appraised. We would have assumed, it was closer to the $115,000. Probably more than that, but not as high as it came in, because the value of real estate's also gone up in the last few years. And our appraiser, Mark Trurin, consistently same person from the other appraisal, who brought it in at 115, brought it in now at 220. DMF had committed to up to $50,000 as part of that. DFW $85,000. That leaves a shortfall. I think I didn't that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong. And if they can probably come up with a little bit more money, I've sort of drawn the line on that. That's probably, in fact, I think that's exactly why the rec panel's here, is to discuss, what is this property worth to the agency, or to our agencies, to our clubs, and to our angling public. As a reminder, this property is probably one of the best crab fisheries around. Great striped bass fishing. Good scup fishing from the bridge. All the bait guys fish up there. Bluefish in the middle of the summertime. Every time you drive by there, there's 2 to 3 cars parked there. I mean, it's I'm not going to say it's it's crowded used, it's consistently used, and it's consistently used every day from April until November. So, I mean, I'll let you guys decide where that sort of falls in the level of importance, and
I think
if it's worth putting some more money into. So, and whether we can afford it is I guess another question with that. So that's it with that slide. Any questions on this?
I'll add that we haven't run the numbers, and Kevin can weigh in, but this was dropped in our lap very quickly, and that this is all preliminary. We looked into buying it, and it just didn't pan out. The owner at the time was just uncooperative, and we walked away. But it's a good property. So I guess I'm asking you folks to give us a thumbs up, thumbs down for for working with Fish and Wildlife. I'm sorry, Mass Wildlife.
Can I jump in?
Yeah. Could you, Ross, could you clarify exactly how much money is needed here?
Well, 85, well, it's 85 and 50 is what we've got so far, assuming that's right. So what does that come, and we've made it, BFW made an offer for $150,000. So that leaves a shortfall of 15,000, assuming the owner accepts the offer. So that's
Okay.
15,000. Yeah.
That's what I was confused about. So they have offered, it's appraised at 220, they've offered 150. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did do my math right. Good. Okay, I just did a real quick check. So yeah, that's where our shortfall is.
Right now, our commitment would be 65,000 if we wanted to get it done.
If we could also ask to split or whatever,
This,
Get it done.
hey, Ross,
Yes.
this
Patrick.
is, I want to make sure that I understand this correctly, and then I have a comment, but this is the property, is this that same property that at one time there might have been there might have been a fuel tank? We went through this road about value and the cleanup cost, and it's roughly 1,000 feet from the Briarwood access point that went away.
Yes, this is that property. There was a tank discovered. The tank has been removed. It was removed illicitly, but the town sort of caught up to that. And they did do an examination of the soil in and around where the tank was removed. It was found to be clean. The owners, had to pay a $335 fine or something like that to the town and hire the land person to do that examination. So that is clean. And I guess another aspect I didn't mention in this, with DFW being the purchaser, this would not be an ongoing cost to Division of Marine Fisheries the same way that Craven's Landing is, where we need to hire somebody, and every time, fence posts need to be done, I'm out there digging holes and everything else. So this would be gaining access without increasing cost to our agency. So
if I could just speak a little bit about this property and the support and an opinion. And I have referred back to the genesis of this committee, the steering committee that Paul did prior to the license, et cetera, when we came up with the 1/3 idea and the launch of this license, et cetera. This was one of the 3 pre-identified locations. Because when the license got launched, it wasn't about expanding access. It was about defending it and protecting it and trying to regain. And literally at the time, we identified, I can remember conversations, we identified something in the city, and Deer Island was always like the top of that. We identified the loss of the steamship pier on Martha's Vineyard, and we identified the loss of the Briarwood location, which is literally, for those who don't know, you look at this bridge, there's a little neighborhood, and you used to be able to drive through that neighborhood and walk into one of the best springtime striped bass public access locations in the state. And private landowners and some other things shut that property down. like in my opinion, when we're talking about a day today, when we can't afford to do the things we want, when we look at bang for the dollar, and when it is likely that the discussions need to be about we can't afford to do that, this property for this amount of money, to me, jumps the prior. I want this one bought personally long before we break ground on that Fall River location. This piece of property here is
Still on my thunder.
heavily trafficked piece of access that has always been just a jewel, and everybody can get. I believe this should be a high priority for our investment.
This is Khalil here, and I have to echo what Patrick just said, and I don't feel that $15,000 should be a deal breaker in this, and if it's a $15,000 shortfall, I mean, in the whole scheme of the universe, that's really nothing, and somehow we should be able to come up with that 15,000. I know it's easy for me to say that and then come up with it's in a whole nother story, but $15,000 should not be a deal breaker on this piece of property.
Ross, I have a quick question. What you kind of described what the access is like right now. Once the property is purchased, are there going to be costs? I know there's not maintenance costs, but what would the changes be made to the property to kind of, or would any changes be made? Are we talking about adding parking?
If you look at the engineering drawing on the left of your screen, if you're looking at the same thing I am, you can see a drawing that Doug Cameron made probably 10 years ago in one of our iterations of trying to get this property. And we're not the first people. I mean, Buzzards Bay Coalition's tried to buy it. We've tried to buy it. We ran into problems with those oil tanks. So that would be, what is that, 5 spots? I guess one would be ADA. It's very sort of crude just to get an idea. Very limited amount of upland here that's high in the velocity and flood zone. So the building opportunities are lessened. The shoreline is going to change with the expansion of the bridge. I've been in contact with DOT throughout their expansion of the bridge. And although it's not currently in the plans, if we acquire the property, I'd like to work with DFW to try and get what you've seen as those ADA type railings put on the bridge itself for people angling. And that's a pretty important aspect of what we do. But like I said, we, or DMF, I say to be specific, would not be the owner, would not be in control. But if DFW purchases the property, that guarantees that equitable access would remain. We also talked to the Wareham Land Trust, and that would have provided the same. Joan Pierce was less comfortable with allowing a town more control than the state, because, even though they are big proponents of access, it comes out of the control of guaranteed forever is, I think, really what she was leading to. And if it does go to DFW, it will be access forever. We talked a little about hunting access there, and I suppose hypothetically at the very tip to the north, you would be far enough away from roadways, but I think that's a really limited use, unless someone wanted to drag a kayak with their decoys out and go somewhere else along the marsh. It could serve as an access for that. And then just to echo Patrick, the area which he was referring to, I think, is known as the power lines, which is about maybe 250 yards away from this location. For people who are willing to hike, is still a very popular, favorable spring and fall location. It's still the place you can go and catch 35 to 50 schoolies on the right tide in there. It's that sort of location. So, and this area definitely has good fishing. Does that answer all your questions?
Is
Right. Go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, Mike.
I think we should move forward and get this piece of property we've been talking about. This license fee you're talking about was to do whatever, was to get access. And I brought it to the table to be sure that we did have that as part of the fee. And I think that we're in the poor people's neighborhood where we pool our resources of the small money that's lacking and get it and stop telling us how great it is and how good it is. You drive by it, you can see it. It's very active and it has 2 curb cuts. It's already there, which makes access pretty easy. I think it's small money for the people of the Commonwealth. Let's go for it. Sorry for my stuttering.
So if I can just add, and I understand the ask right now is for 15, which is to me a no-brainer. But to me also,
15 is actually 65, just so that we're aware.
okay, so that's what we're talking about. Is are they talking about going all the way up to the 220 if that's what's required? Because that's I'm okay with that. I want to say that. I also don't, as a side note that contributes to this conversation, when we as a panel give advice on a project at, and I'm just going to use a blind number, at 150,000 and bids come in at 300 plus or 400 plus, I don't think it should be automatically assumed that we would still be in favor. You know, and I just, we are entering and we are in a period where we have to value bang for the dollar versus and cost benefit versus the long-term health of the fund and all of it. And as these dramatic changes, as you guys have been talking about, and these problems we know are coming with the aging out of people in the paid part of the fund, et cetera. I just want to say that, like, in my mind, this is cheap. And we should do whatever needs to be done to not lose this opportunity again.
At the 250, it's cheap.
20.
All right, let me craft the ask. I am asking the panel, it looks like worst case scenario, we're in for 110,000. Does the panel say yay or nay to that? If you could, Kevin, if you could ask that question.
So what you're saying is the current offer is 150, but we don't know if that will be accepted.
Yeah,
Correct.
and it's a little confusing because Fish and Wildlife they were paying more than us, and it seems like we're creeping up towards half of it. So I'm just laying out, if it comes down to we have to pay half to get this property at 110,000, assuming
Okay.
they would take 220, but not 150. So we don't have to come back here and have an emergency meeting and ask for X amount of money.
Are you looking for a motion, Mike?
We don't need one if there's consensus, but sure, motion is fine.
Well, I was just saying, if you're asking us, I'd be happy to move or whatever. It sounds to me like the view of the panel is that we are willing to go up to contribute enough funding to make the 220,000 whole, and meet the asking price if that's what's needed.
That's good.
Up to you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, the question, that was the only question I had. Does that mean that we're willing to do 220 minus 85, or is it looking at us being willing to do whatever? I mean, basically we're saying whatever it takes, or is the understanding it would be 50% of 220?
I would say that Mass Wildlife needs to be in for half. You know, they want the property too.
So that was mine, just based on, they're smart too, and they're going to look at stuff, and God knows they're probably listening. I would say that we're willing to support to pay for half.
Okay, so then I guess do I make the motion or ask for a motion to support up to?
You could ask is there any objection to?
Yeah. Is there any objection to covering up to 50% of 220,000 for this property? I'm not hearing any.
No.
All right. Motion passes by consent. Beautiful.
And Ross, you had asked if you answered both my questions. The second question that I had for you was just about how can we make sure that we have access to the bridge area? If we're going to invest in this property, then it would be great to make sure. And it sounds like you're having those conversations already, so that's great.
We've asked for the curb cuts to remain a constant there, which I think are from people who work at DOT, that's one and the same.
Great.
That would be a consideration, and we're not just going to close the property off.
So Ross, so in my view, or am I correct in digesting that? Let's assume that this goes through and this 50-50 purchase of the land happens. Then there's going to be development costs that are going to come in later on, correct?
And that is something DFW, we want to stay out of the property management business, as Craven's Landing is an amazing amount of effort. I think that the dynamics of this property are much different in that we don't have neighbors the same way that we do at the, where Craven's is, surrounding the property. It would be nice to somehow work with the other division because they would be in charge of that, and then work with groups like I think it's Keeping Wareham Clean. They have a big Facebook influence, and they go around, they clean up areas. But yeah, anyone who's fished here has seen, it needs a major cleanup. It needs a few trucks of stuff hauled out of there currently.
So I thought I recalled back from those, and you referred, was that 10 years ago? My goodness.
Thereabouts.
I thought that there was going to be, when they did the parking and whatnot, that there was some sort of stabilization plan or something for that was all part of that stuff that Doug Cameron did years ago that needed to be when we got it.
And that would have been had Division of Marine Fisheries owned it, not Fish and Wildlife. So
okay.
Can I ask a question, Ross? This is Tom O'Shea. When you say DFW, is DFW paying out of their Inland Fish and Game Fund versus the DFG Capital Fund? And also, is OFBA involved?
Well, Doug was there last week at the site visit meeting with Joan Pierce. I don't know where they did go to their lands committee, and that's where they got the $85,000 approved.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes we pay for that out of the capital fund that comes out of the department, not DFW's Inland Fish and Game Fund. So it does matter actually where this money
that would have to be a Joan Pierce question.
Yeah, so I think we're arguing, not arguing, but discussing something that could be easily solved here if I had known which fund this was coming from.
Yep.
All right, we'll look into that, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great.
All right.
I just had one other question for you. Last meeting, you mentioned Salem Willows Pier. We were looking at, you were hoping for, I think it was September 2024. Are you still thinking that's the timeline?
I mean, I'd like to think within that. I mean, if we can get going this winter, it's, about a 9-month build. And if there's, run into problems, it could go a few weeks longer, a few weeks later. Hopefully we don't run into some of the same things we did with Deer Island. We shouldn't. Everything else around the town is sort of, and other things on the park are being put on hold until we're done. They have another grant to do some park upgrades. And the town has basically told that group that hold on. And they ran into some problems with historical commissions and everything else. So that's in good shape. The major change that we made is already instituted and part of the plans, which I look at that as akin to the parking lot, which was the real holdup with Deer Island. The wall was sort of the thing that set us back on this one, but we're done with it, as opposed to, changing horses mid race. So we're done with it, unless something major comes up, which I don't see happening. I mean, but these projects always tend to surprise you. So,
Ross Kalel here, hypothetical. You say it's getting great use today. If that's the case, where are people parking today? And what if the lot gets maxed out at 4 cars plus one for the ADA? Where would people park if they wanted to use that facility?
So to begin with, currently there are 2 curb cuts that provide parking parallel to Route 6 right there that probably handle 4, 5 cars if you're friendly with each other. I've never really seen more than 3 or 4. I think 4 would be the max, and it's a rarity. If things get maxed out on the other side of the Marion Bridge, there's 1 or 2 parking spots there. If it gets maxed out, it gets maxed out. It would be a rare event. It could happen. There is going to be a wider road now. I don't know if parking will be legal there, that's outside of the property, so I can't comment on that.
There's also, although there's also some legal parking for, I believe it's as many as 5 in that ballpark. It's more than 2 or 3 down that. It's actually a town road, but it goes down on the other side of the bridge. It goes down across from that inn. Because years ago there was a question about it, and actually the town signed it to make sure that it was okay, that the public knew that they could park there. You end up there in the spring. There can be a dozen cars between all the different spots there.
You're talking about on the Marion side.
No, on the Wareham side, I believe.
Okay.
If you you approach the bridge, you sort of turn in and then take a hard right, and it goes down to a dead end. And on the left hand, there's a property. I believe it was like a not a hotel, but more like a bed and breakfast place. But on the right, along across the street where you're sort of it's a hill. There's spaces there that you can park along that. Park there many times.
I didn't mean to drag this out with parking, but I think, Mr. Chairman of the committee of the rec panel, I think we do have a consensus between Patrick, Mike, and myself that it's a valuable project, and I feel so because for the shore angler, access to the salt water is getting scarcer and scarcer with private property and no trespassing signs, and it would be a shame that if we didn't go ahead and do everything possible to try to move forward with this particular project.
Great. Thank you, Mike, Khalil, Patrick. Thank you, everybody, for your comments, and Ross for the presentation.
All right.
Does
Before
Mike
we move on,
Armstrong, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the end of our formal presentations that we
Wait,
have.
actually, I have to answer Mike Moss's question regarding the bridges, and I'm
Okay.
yeah, and I don't have a whole lot, but last weekend we saw that a large amount of funds were released by the feds at the state to do work on the bridges themselves, and that spurned some email stuff that's probably outside of what I'm doing. And Doug, unfortunately, isn't here today, and he is the liaison working with Commissioner O'Shea on this. So, Mike Moss, to answer your question, I'm probably not the one most qualified to do it at this point. But those emails were also sent out to the Sportsman's Council and local county leagues. And that's as much as I know about that right now. So that the ball's being kept in the air.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
Let me add to that, Ross. I'm waiting for an update from Doug on that project, but let me just say that if you read what it said the construction on the new bridge will begin late calendar year 2028 and would last until late 2035, early 2036. So I'll find out if we're able to get the designs into that project. So that's what we need to find out, as to what extent we can put the design of the fishing pier into that bridge project, but it's a long way away.
Yeah. You're going dead.
What's that?
I think it was just background noise.
Background noise? Okay.
Yep.
All right, so to move on, Commissioner, while you got your face on the screen, so I think this is a brief conversation because we've talked extensively as a panel about trying, there's a different modes we can go to increase the revenue. You know, we kind of started at the end of a Republican governor's time, and you know, probably was the wrong time. But if Tom and Dan or Kevin, do you have a couple of words that I think our plan is to re-energize moving one of the plans forward?
Well, I'll let Dan start if he wants. Dan, if you want to begin.
Yeah, I mean, we've introduced this topic to Tom just recently. Explained to him that there's a few ways we can go. One is we request legislation to amend the age for the free permit. We could seek a straight up fee increase from 10 to a higher number, taking into account in the future the handling fees are going to go up a little bit. So, you know, $15 doesn't necessarily get you an extra $5. We could also seek some support from the administration in terms of bond cap for some of these projects. You know, DMF has never been the recipient of to my knowledge, of bond cap for these kinds of projects. And I know Tom is engaged with the secretary on issues pertaining to strategic planning, which could fit in very nicely into that. So, you know, Tom just got here in May. You know, he's been working on a whole bunch of things, including strategic planning, but this fits in nicely. And I know Tom intends to try to pursue this in those conversations. So I hope I didn't take your thunder away, Tom, but
No, that's great.
I'll be working closely with you on this.
Yeah, no, that's great, Dan. I think the point is that, you know, this kind of license revenue as you were hearing, the dollars don't go very far on these big construction projects. So for access projects. So if we can supplement that through capital dollars or environmental bond dollars, I think it'll help the money go a lot further, providing, you know, funds for those access projects. But we also know that we need to make sure that over time we have a sustainable and growing fund, if possible, for our saltwater marine rec funds. So we need to get ahead of that. And, you know, Dan and I will be looking into that.
Question, just so are we in agenda item 5 now?
Yes.
Okay. So if I could comment, understand everything that's been discussed. We have discussed some of this in the past. I think that there's another subject or two that falls in here that's not, and that is that, so access and the management of fisheries is changing. It's no fault of this committee or those that are behind this license or anybody here that the for-hire recreational anglers and private anglers are being split in management. It's happening with most major recreational target species. And that affects this subject. It has effect to this subject. It's happened in bluefish. It's happened in Scott Black sea bass. It's happening across the board, and now it's up to change the access between private anglers and those on a for-hire vessel with striped bass. It's a national campaign, and it's happening everywhere. It's happened with haddock. So that being said, it's difficult for those of us that represent primarily private anglers in the system to this fund is, you can buy a $65 in-state chart for hire permit, and every single angler from every other state and from within the state can get on your boat and not pay. If we're going to look at different ways to shore up the fund, and I have not completely abandoned my support for increasing the number for private anglers. But one of the things I think in a comprehensive discussion of the subject, I would like to really get an understanding of what it costs to manage the for-hire fleet out of this fund, including staff costs that is supported by this fund. I know that we pay for a biologist who works on things. I know that we support additional MRIP sampling, and all of that stuff benefits both. But I believe that we're like under 5% contribution from the for-hire fleet. I also believe that there is a significant portion of that there is significant evidence that says that the for-hire fleet in the Commonwealth we have over 850 registered vessels. I don't necessarily believe these are all active businesses, and it's just a way to get anglers who are fishing aboard your vessel outside of the license and extra fish. And so it's hard not to bring that discussion up here when we're talking about at a time of inflation that the Commonwealth citizens are going to be asked to pay more, and they should be, to be honest. Like I said, I haven't come off that, but to not be looking at what I believe is a really out of whack price for the for-hire fleet, and to not be thinking about things like that as we consider what the right way to stabilize the fund is. I just think that subject needs to be involved in this. And maybe it starts with some sort of true financial analysis of services rendered versus contribution.
Thank you, Patrick. Dan, do you want to kind of, is that part of the discussion today, or is that something that, Patrick, are you asking for Dan to kind of come back?
Yeah, you know what, I'm interested in Patrick's issues, and I think it's appropriate for our staff to take a look at these on the side. I don't want to hold up the necessarily the simple stuff that that this group has already endorsed. But one thing that comes to mind is we don't know how many for-hire customers aren't already permitted. I mean, many of them may be. So I'm not even sure that gets you, or we don't know what that would get you in terms of the because we do have reciprocity with other states, and many of the folks who go on charter boats probably already they fish at times without a charter boat. I mean, on other platforms or from shore. So we don't really know what that would mean. But I think Patrick's burning questions deserve some investigations, and I'd be happy to get staff over the next few months to kind of take a look at those. The issues that he's talking about with this mode split is a important policy question that I have some concerns about, and I know Patrick does as well. And but I'll stay in conversation with Patrick on some of those issues. And but I think it's something we can maybe we can come back to you in the summer meeting and maybe talk with some of this. But it just won't be an every 6-month thing. I'll stay in touch with Patrick.
And Dan, I appreciate that. And I mean, we've obviously talked about this before. When we talk about this, the landscape is changing, and this fund is primarily funded by individual citizens that now are getting less access to the same species as those coming off of for hires. However, we are paying for benefits and management and additional benefits and management. And that's just not okay. And it's just not an amount of money that I like it. Like if the proposal that we approved, I don't know how many years ago, 2-3 years ago, about an increase, if that was to go to an I&E hearing tomorrow, I guarantee you that there's a half a dozen clubs that are going to show up at that I&E hearing and oppose it. And I don't, just based on what's going on. And I just think we have a comprehensive discussion about how that citizens are paying for a business and a loophole. We're not okay with what's going on with management, and we're not going to pay for it.
Yeah. No, I hear you,
Thank
Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Dan. Ben, you have a question?
I more of a comment, Kevin. I was gonna remind the panel that our for hire survey staff is entirely paid for by ACCSP. Well, and you know that's we get the money back from for those people. That's part of our annual budget, so it's not paid for out of the fund. That employee, Kristen, isn't paid for out of the fund. And then I also wanted to say that I've already initiated a review of our charter database and starting to get a better understanding of what we're seeing in our data, Dan. With Matt Ayer, I've tasked him with this, and also to look at neighboring states and what their charges and policies are, so that we can begin this process of trying to understand what our charter fleet looks like, who the people are, and any changes that we might find appropriate in the future. So that is, Patrick, I think your concerns about this have been heard, and we are already trying to move that ball a little bit.
Thanks,
Well,
Ben.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
All right, do we have any other comments or questions before we move on to other business?
Oh boy, I'm out of it.
Oh, good shit. Died.
I'll die pretty soon.
Mike Moss, did you have something you wanted to comment? All right.
Out of battery.
I'm running out of battery.
Okay.
Probably gonna lose you. I'm on my cell phone.
All right. We're wrapping up soon.
As far as you. Wait a minute, Ross. You there?
Yep.
I'm
you
here,
hear me?
Mike. Yeah.
We talking about them ramping them fishing piers on the canal. We don't have to wait for the bridge to be built. Right, I'm not gonna live that long.
Right.
I'd like to get over there once, so I wouldn't have to stand on the rocks.
Doug and I have actually been speaking to a member of the Corps about doing small piers as a potential thing. We're sort of out of line or out of order with the meeting right now. Do you want me to just talk to you privately about this later, and I'll share with you the
fine.
emails?
That's fine. I probably won't make it till the end because my battery is almost dead.
Gotcha. I'll fill you in with the emails, and I'll give you a call sometime in the next couple of days.
Let's move along. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you, Mike. Mike Armstrong, are we moving on to other business then? We're talking about free fishing days?
Yeah, if I could make a couple of comments before we move on. One, I'm not sure I've explicitly told you folks, maybe I did. But Ben Gahagan is now head of the Recreational Fisheries Program. It formerly was a project under Greg Scomo, along with other things. And several months ago, we decided to elevate it to the level of a program, so it could be just more dedication to just the mission of rec fishing. So as I fade away, you will see more and more of Ben taking over the role that I've served. In fact, my plan would be by spring, Ben will be filling this role. So I wanted all you guys to know that, and he will do the job better than me. And I think there was one other thing, and damned if I can remember what it was. Just to remind you that there's a striped bass hearing tomorrow in Gloucester at our facility on Addendum 2. So if you're on the North Shore, you should stop by.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock. Thanks, Claire.
Great. And Someone mentioned that we would talk about the free fishing day. Is this a follow-up to adding Mother's Day that we discussed last meeting?
Yes. So in my review of the minutes, I noticed that this was a postponed discussion item to this meeting. And we looked at the language, and it is within our ability to create two distinct no fishing days. We don't have to do them consecutive. I know, Patrick, at the last meeting you had mentioned, I think Khalil, you had as well, that, keeping the no fishing days, Father's Day weekend consistently was getting a little bit of negative feedback. So one idea I think that was put forward was, why not make Mother's Day and Father's Day both free fishing days? And that's certainly something we can do. And if we want to do that, we should maybe decide that now, and then we can get it into the guide. The sooner we make that decision, the better it is in terms of getting the word out on the street. Everybody recognizes we don't have as much to fish for in the second Sunday in May, typically, but that shouldn't discourage anyone. So anyway, it's certainly something we could do if there's interest among the panel members. Maybe we could have a brief conversation about that. By law, we're supposed to have 2 no fishing days each year.
Mr. Chairman, Khalil here.
Go ahead, Khalil.
I think it's a great idea, and if you feel it's appropriate, we can move that proposal if you feel it's appropriate to make the motion.
I do. So at this point, I guess I ask for a second.
I'll second it. Absolutely.
Great. Do we have anyone who has any comment or opposition to creating a Mother's Day free fishing day? I'm not hearing any. So.
Okay. So Ben, make sure we get that into the guide. I assume Ben's still on.
So.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes, Patrick.
On a completely different subject, can I ask the question? So is this, as Mike just alluded to, fading away? Is this Dr. Armstrong's final meeting in his current position?
Well, I don't know, Patrick. Things are very fluid. I would say by July next year, I will be retired, but I'm not sure just yet.
Mr. Chair, Kevin.
Yes.
Is it anticipated we will meet again prior to July of next year?
I think so. We usually meet, I believe, in May.
That man deserves a proper thank you and goodbye, and I do not want to in any way, shape, or form let that opportunity go by.
Thank you, Patrick.
I agree. Great. All right. Is there any other business? Anyone have any comments they'd like to make on the panel?
Yeah. Can I say something, Mr. Chair?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I had no idea Mike Moss was talking about individual fishing piers separately from the bridge. From what I understood, Commissioner Ramadan had asked Doug Cameron, our OFBA director, to look at the possibility of using the bridge abutments on the Cape Cod Canal Bridge as part of creating a pier in relation to that project. But it sounds like what I'm hearing from Mike Moss, he wants separate fishing piers unrelated to the bridge. So that was news to me, and I wasn't aware of that. So I do want to find out more from Doug and maybe Ross about that.
They are not necessarily separate. What Ron Amadon was talking about was in fact the repurposing the old bridge abutments, and then the Army Corps separately to extend what Mike Moss has wanted for years, has come to me looking for smaller projects, and Doug and his people have been involved in that.
Okay,
So I can fill you in on all that, or
That'd be
Doug
great.
certainly can as well.
Ross, it sounds like there's gonna be some further conversations and emails. Can you keep the entire panel up to date by email on what those discussions are?
Sure, absolutely. Why
Thank
don't
you.
I send everything then through you, Kevin and Tom, and I'll make sure that Ben works with me on that as well, so that we're sort of have a unified message, and Doug will be in there too.
great.
Great.
Great. If there's nothing else, then Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, everyone. And can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Go ahead, move to adjourn.
Thank you, Khalil. Patrick, second.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Motion meeting.
Nice job there.
Kevin.